This is the Portfolio Rubric Guidance for Standard KCCA3. This standard has two parts. First, students will write numbers from 0 to 20. Second, they will represent a number of objects with a written number 0 to 20. To assess this kindergarten standard, the teacher will assess the student's ability to write numbers 0 to 20. Then assess the student's ability to count a group of objects and then write that number that represents the amount. There must be two assessments for this standard. For this standard, the first part, the teacher can ask the student to start with 0 and write to 20, or the teacher can say a number from 0 to 20 in any order and have the student write that number. If you choose to say a number from 0 to 20 and the students write the number, be sure to upload an answer key with the student's writing product. You must also be sure that you have included all of the numbers from 0 to 20. If you give the students a recording sheet and ask them to write from 0 to 20, that one sheet can be uploaded. This can be assessed as a whole group, as a small group, or as individuals. For the second part of this assessment, this is also a writing assessment. You will give the students a sheet that has 4 sets of objects to count. The first set must contain objects from 0 to 5. The second set must contain objects 6 to 10. The third set must contain objects 11 to 15. And the last set must contain objects 16 to 20. The student counts the objects and then writes that number next to the objects. For the kindergarten standard, reversals are accepted as correct answers, but reversals of digits in place value order are not correct. So for example, if the answer is 12 and the student writes 21, this would be incorrect. Once the student has mastered this kindergarten standard, both parts, write from 0 to 20 and counting objects and writing the number, then you can move to the first grade standard. In first grade, the teacher is assessing the student's ability to write numbers up to 120. They are also assessing the student's ability to count a group of objects and write that number to represent the amount. This assessment also has two parts. For the first part, the teacher will call out any number between 21 and 120, and the student writes that number. The teacher must use 10 different numbers. For the second part, the teacher gives the students a sheet, and they have 4 different sets of objects to count. For this group of sets, the first set must contain 21 to 30 objects. The second set must contain 31 to 50 objects. The third set must contain 51 to 75 objects. And the last set must contain 76 to 100 objects. The teacher will ask the students to count the objects and write that number to show how many were in the group. For the first grade standard, reversals are not accepted as correct answers. When assessing the first grade standard, a teacher could have the objects in groups on 10 frames, they could have 10 rods, or an array of objects on that sheet. This can also be assessed as a whole group, or in a small group, or individually. When uploading evidence for this standard, it is required to submit the student writing product for both parts. Both parts must be submitted to be aligned to this standard. If you have chosen to call out numbers for students to write at the kindergarten level 0 through 5, and when you call out numbers for the first grade standard, the answer sheet must be included with the student work. You can upload your answer sheet with the student work, or you can type in the answers in your context narrative. If students have mastered the kindergarten standard and you have moved to the first grade standard to assess, if students master the first grade standard at a level 6 or 7, you do not need to upload your evidence from the kindergarten standard showing that they mastered level 5. Once you have your assessment, it is time to look at your rubric. Keep in mind that your rubric is used to score your student work after you have assessed it. You are also looking at the rubric to score both parts. For the first part, if the student is not able to write any of their numbers from 0 to 20, and they are also not able to write any of the numbers for the 4 different sets of objects, that is the score of a level 0. When looking at the student work, if they were able to write at least one, but less than 5 of the numbers from 0 to 20 correctly, and on the second part, if they were able to write at least one number for one of the sets, that is a level 1. Level 2, the student is able to write at least 5 of the numbers for the first part, and they are able to accurately count and write the number for 2 of the groups of objects. That is a level 2. At level 3, the student accurately can write at least 10, but not all of the numbers. And on the second assessment, the student is accurately able to write at least 3 of the numbers for the groups. That is a score of a level 3. At level 4, they get both assessments correct. They can write all of the numbers 0 to 20 correctly, and they can count each of the 4 sets and write the number correctly. That is the score of a level 4. Remember, at the kindergarten level, reversals are acceptable. When students are able to write all of these numbers correctly without reversals, that is a level 5 for both parts, for writing numbers 0 to 20 and for counting the groups of objects and writing the number. If they are able to do all of those parts without reversals, that is a level 5. When you move to the first grade standard, if the student is able to complete at least one part, either they can write the numbers that you call out from to 120, or if they accurately are able to do 4 groups of objects, count the objects and write the number, if they can do one of those parts with 100% accuracy, that is level 6. If they are able to do both parts with 100% accuracy, that is a level 7.